We're back again. Hope you've been enjoying the authors that have been talking to us about their work, about their process, about what crime writing, thriller writing, mystery writing means to them. And just for us, the reader, to get a little bit of understanding about all that goes on behind, to give us just the most amazing reads. Again, I want to thank the publishers for bringing this next novel to my attention, and of course then for allowing me to be in conversation, have a wee consultation with Ava Glass. Ava, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It is an absolute pleasure, because as viewers, listeners will know, the Doctor loves crime fiction, loves thrillers, psychological thrillers. It makes life so rich, delicious, the darkness, and yet there's something even more special. And it's when it's a debut author. Well, you may have written other things before, but this is your first novel of this kind. Is that correct?
That's right. It's my first ever attempt to throw myself into the world of espionage.
Yes, 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 yes. Welcome, welcome, and all the very best with this. A fast-paced read, a takes your breath away, and an awesome character. Do we have to get into main protagonist? So without further ado, you are a former civil servant and a journalist who actually is bringing the day job onto the page, if we're allowed to say it like that. Your bio says that you live in the same town in the south of England as Christopher Steele, but that's a coincidence. I love that. And you are actually writing under a pseudonym, which I find just so delicious. Um, Whoever you may be, Ava Glass, I'm glad that you were brought to the world of delivering us a cracking read. But if we can go back to the time when you didn't have a book published and you didn't have a novel, in its creative moments, was there a defining time in your life that said, I have to, I have to become a novelist?
That's funny. I think there were sort of two times in my
Mm-hmm.
life, really, where this sort of made sense. Once was when I was a crime reporter. And so I worked in America covering for quite a few years, covering crime in southern cities
Okay.
mostly. So
Yeah.
New Orleans and Savannah, Georgia, those were sort of my beats. And I lived in New Orleans when it was the murder capital of America. So it was a very nonstop job, I
Yeah.
would say.
A busy job. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And there were moments, I mean, really, when things got a bit tricky, when things were a bit, because you get quite close to things in the States. You see here in the UK, it's you everybody's kept a little further away from what really happens. But in the States, they do let you get right up into the action. And one of the first things I learned as a sort of 23-year-old crime reporter was how to get blood off my shoes. Because
That
when you're
close.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
yeah, really
Wow.
close.
Yeah. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Already with what you're telling me now, my questions have started to pack up, or stack up there for you. So, if have you also worked as that kind of journalist in the UK as well?
No, I came by the time I moved to the UK, I was an editor. So I was in the safe rooms.
Yeah, because you just made me think about, with regards to reporting, with regard to catching that story. If you are allowed so close,
Mm.
does it make for not necessarily better journalism, because journalism is a skill a person possesses, but does it make for better content, do you think?
I think it's hard to say, but I will say there is something extremely immediate and very visceral
Hmm.
about US crime reporting, because the way it worked for me was I had a police scanner, which is perfectly normal and legal, which scans police radio content. And I had a list of police codes that were stuck to my computer. So there were about 6 codes I was interested in, which was armed robbery, shooting, stabbing, uh what was the other one? There were only a few. Murder happened, and an officer in trouble. There was 6, and so you
Yeah.
only really had to memorize 6 codes. There were about 50 of them, but if I knew 6, I was safe. And if I heard those codes, then I knew to sort of give my editor a warning. And if one of them sounded like, if it sounded real, because you get a
Hmm.
lot of them and then it turns out to be nothing. There's lots of guns in America, so there's lots of gunfire, and most of that, the police go, there's nothing there.
There's nothing. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
one time out of 50, they'll go and there's a victim. And as soon as you hear them call an ambulance, or as soon as you hear, much worse if they call for a coroner, I'm on the road. I'm already in my car by then. I had a radio in my car. I had everything was connected. So I could be connected talking to my editor while I'm driving to the scene. And if I got really lucky, then I might get to the crime scene before they put the crime tape up. And if I got in there, then I could get a look at it before they threw me out.
Oh. Oh.
And by the time, that's what I needed. Then I could describe it. Then I could say what I saw. So
Yeah.
I could give without, you're not accused there, perhaps, so much as you are here of perhaps meddling with the criminal case that follows.
Mm.
It's simply a description. And so you could go in and describe. I could talk to witnesses. As soon as I was tossed out of the crime scene and thrown onto my heels on the street, I would go looking for somebody who might have seen what happened. And they would tell me what they saw. Then I would go back to the police and get their perspective on what they knew. And they would tell me, like, right there, because they want to get rid of me. So they would just say,
Yeah.
we think it's this, or we think it's that, we think it's a robbery, we think he knew the suspect, or we're looking for this person. If you see, can you put out a warning that we're
Yeah.
looking for this
Yeah.
person? And that's a story, man. That's action. There's a lot of action in that. So the next morning I was giving people some juicy stories to read over their breakfast.
Yeah. As opposed to maybe a more clinical or distanced way of reporting
Yes, exactly.
an
I think
incident.
here
Yeah.
it's much more just the facts. Here's everything we know to be absolutely true. Whereas
Yeah.
I was reporting, here's everything people kind of thought, maybe, sort of. And that's a different thing.
Okay. So this is the discussion we're going to have. It's all. I already feel it's on fire. I don't know where this is going to go, but it's brilliant. So, this is the first time that you considered maybe looking at writing things with regard to fiction, and I can see that, yeah, already. But of course, this is not the world of espionage that you're talking to me about. This is very much everyday streets. I don't want to say, common crime, but it's, yeah, it's that 24/7 that may or may not happen. But that's not what you're writing. So, what's the other aspect, and how come it took you down this avenue of noir? Mm.
Okay, so flash forward 20 years. So that was 20 years ago that I was a crime reporter, and I was just a baby fresh out of school and, just making my way. 20 years later, I'm living in England. I'm working as an editor. I've been here for quite a while because I moved here a long time ago. And I got a job working for the Home Office and the British government. A friend of mine was working there, and she was looking for somebody who could do communications about counterterrorism and not get completely freaked out. And she thought of me because she knew years before I'd been a crime reporter and that I didn't easily scare. And so she asked if I'd be interested, and it sounded challenging and just completely different from anything I'd ever done before, and just a window into a different world. So I took it. And that was when I first started basically working with spies. That was the beginning. And while I was working with them, not being a spy myself, simply completely on the outside, it's if, imagine there's a sort of a wall of bulletproof glass between me and them. And that wall is all the things I cannot know, all the things they will never tell me. And I knew so little that even now, these years later, I can't tell you how much of what I saw and how much of what they told me that was truth and how much of it was a lie, because it's a world, it's a world of shadows. Like I'm right in the middle of it, and I still don't know anybody's real identity. I don't even know who I'm talking to every day, who is a spy and who isn't, because nobody tells you that. So that world, when I was in that world and I was there for 5 years, at the end of that, I thought, really, someday, Christy, you had to
Yeah,
write
come on,
this.
come on. Yeah, you've got to do it. And so it began.
Yeah,
And it became, if you don't mind, I'll just hold my little proof copy up here. Do you have your copy with you, Tom?
I do. Hold on, I'll get it out. It's
Come
actually
on.
under my computer. My computer's resting on it. There we go.
Yeah. Oh, I love the light and the dark contrast there. That is just, yeah.
Yeah, yours is
But
reversed. I love it.
but what is definitely that river, the Thames there, just,
Yeah.
yeah, soaked in blood. That's the gruesome aspect of me thinking, I love that. I really love that. It's powerful. It's a really powerful image. They've done a beautiful job on that. It really does make you want to, what is going on in those pages? Are you happy with that front cover?
Oh yeah, I love it. No, I completely love it. I think they've done just a heck of a job with it. They've been marvelous from the beginning. They completely got it. When I did write the books, it took me a long time to actually decide to write it, because espionage is tricky. It's tricky to get into. Not very many women write espionage,
It's
very
true.
few.
Yeah,
So it's not a it's not a it's not an area of fiction that women feel like the door's open to them. And you get discouraged a lot. But the story and the character, they felt true to me and real to me, and I wanted to tell that story. And in the end, I just told my agent, I'm going to write it, and if you hate it, that's fine. I'll just put it in my pocket and I'll
yeah.
hang on to it.
But at least I'll have got this story out. Yeah,
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 exactly,
yeah.
precisely.
So how long did it take you to create Alias Emma?
Well, I would say in total, if you take in the time I spent thinking about it and not actually doing it, it took several years. I mean, there
Mm,
were at least 2 years of I've got a character, but I don't have a story, and no story felt right. It's really tricky espionage because it's not as simple and I'm not saying crime is simple, but with crime there's a crime. And then there's a solution. And with espionage, there's just twists and turns and turns and
yeah,
twists, and there's no simple crime. And so coming up with something that could make a really fast paced, because I knew I wanted to write fast paced. I knew I didn't want to write, I mean, I read it and I love it, but I didn't want to write the really slow, like, I don't know what you call it. There's almost a kind of an intellectual spy novel that's very thinky. I
yeah.
didn't want to write that. I wanted to write something extremely fast. And I wanted to write a heroine that was as strong, as brave, as heroic as the male spies in fiction are. I wanted to write an equal to them. I didn't want her to be bogged down by the things that I often find women characters are bogged down with. I
Mhm.
wanted her free of everything, free to be as flawed, as ruthless, as dangerous, and as, I guess, as charming as male spies
Mhm.
are often portrayed. I wanted all
Mhm.
of that. I just wanted
Yeah.
it in a female character. That's what I wanted to play with. And that's what I tried to do.
So in the creation of that character, and you pulled off all that you wanted to pull off with that, there's no doubt about it. But was there any aspect of a character that you struggled with because of maybe unconscious bias or baggage of conditioning, that women don't do this, or and I don't believe that at all. But I think if we're of a certain age, we still carry those voices from the past that, you know. So I'm intrigued as to whether did you just, I am here and she's going to appear like this, or whether those nagging voices that you had to hush while you created.
I think with Emma, my main character, I was so conscious of that peril that I had her in my head, like she. I did not put any of my biases into, but where my biases appeared, and I think you can find them if you look for them, is all the male characters around her. I put almost no other women in the book, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something I really played around with that, because there's very few people in this book, very few main characters. There's only really 4 that you see. You'll see more in later books in the series because it will be a series, but in this one, it's just a really tight cast of characters. And I knew I wanted her boss to be a father figure. I didn't want it to be a woman. And in
Mhm.
part, I didn't want her to be a woman because of Killing Eve, because it was so big, I was afraid of being accused of sort of stealing that relationship of the two women, the older woman and the younger woman spy.
Yes, yes, yeah. But tell me, because of course without the visual, but I think I think Emma maybe dresses in a maybe a different way to Villanelle. Yeah,
Yes, that's true.
yeah, yeah. And nor do I think. I mean, Emma's not that psychopath. I don't think.
No, no,
You
she's
know.
not. I definitely didn't want to make her a psychopath.
Yeah,
That I knew.
but I take your point that we'd seen that dynamic between Villanelle and Caroline, and so people could transfer that, but yeah, so that decision to make the boss male, that father
Mhm.
figure. And I also think though as well, those biases we talk about, but and yet I think it really works. you
I
know
think it does too. I know what you
yeah.
mean. I can't imagine anybody but Charles Ripley as her supervisor.
Mhm.
I can see him most clearly in my head of all the characters. He's the
Mhm.
one I most like. He was just there from the start. It had to be him. And I wanted her to rescue a man because I wanted to subvert the women being rescued paradigm in every other book.
Yeah,
So I wanted to see what it would, I wanted to like work with a woman rescuing, physically rescuing,
yeah.
saving a man, which is what she does throughout this book. And so he had to be a man as well. So then you run out of characters. I ran out of characters quite quickly. So there's lots of men in this book, but I'm hoping I'm using them differently.
Yes, exactly. That reimagining of the landscape. And I also, on behalf of lots and lots of readers, want to thank you at this point for a smaller cast of characters. Because often, and that's not to say, I'm really glad that there's going to be more bodies around there, and by that I mean living bodies, not necessarily dead bodies. Um, but sometimes it is refreshing not to have to hold a cast of characters,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
you as the reader can just really immerse yourself. Yeah, and immerse
Yeah.
yourself, especially in Emma Makepeace. And yeah, and it thrills me for you to say that there's going to be more, because a person, a character, an individual like Emma cannot just remain within the pages of one book.
No, I don't think so either. I love her too much. I want to spend a lot of time in her world.
Yeah,
I live vicariously through Emma. I mean, anytime I'm working on this book, her life is everything I wish mine could be, but it is not.
and yet she makes it so. Now, interesting, in the blurb, of course, it says nothing about her is real, not even her name, because as you've explained to us, the world of spies, of espionage, who knows? Who knows who they are? Who knows? But her her characteristics, her traits, they are who she is, are they not? Whoever she may be. Mhm.
Yeah.
And apart from the fact that, I mean, the capability, and that boldness, that brains. If you I haven't asked this question for a while, to authors, because thankfully we're out of lockdown now. But one of the questions that I used to ask during lockdown was that if you took your character to a dinner party, what would be the aspect that you knew people would welcome? And what would be the aspect that you just really hoped didn't come out?
Mm.
Because it might either be an embarrassment, or they might not be able to contain themselves about something. Is Can you talk to us about Emma in that context?
I think the thing about Emma, which is true of most spies I've met, is that she will be whatever she needs to be to get the information she needs. So at a dinner party, she would be precisely what was expected. So she would be, if it was elegant, she'd be elegant. She'd be charming. She could be seductive. Um, she she would make people talk to her. She has this innate ability to get people to tell her information, to trust her, and to tell her things. This is this is absolutely one of the most important attributes I think any spy could possibly have, because the best way to get information is just to ask somebody and have them trust you enough to tell you, and then job done. If you've got to actually break into things, that's much harder. And so she has that skill. I think if there's an embarrassing trait of hers, what would it be? I can honestly say I've never met a spy with an embarrassing trait that I could actually see, because they wouldn't let you see it. I suppose the only thing would be nobody ever would know her. Like, nobody who met her at that party would actually know her. They aren't meeting her. They're meeting whoever she wants to be that night.
Yeah, who I'm going to project, and that's, yeah. So I suppose it's that, yeah, that sense of, but is there really this person there? Because yeah, that facade, and that's such a shame, isn't it? Because all that person is that we don't know. But
Mm.
yeah.
Isn't that I think, I hope that comes through in the book, that she's with
Mm.
this man who she's rescuing. They're together all night long trying to get across London without being caught on the CCTV cameras, which have been hacked. So they are on this journey, and they talk when there's moments when they're not on the run. They actually do talk. And I feel like she does regret the fact that he can't really know her, and that she can't tell him the truth, and that she can't ever have a normal relationship like that. It's just not something she can do, because, like, I did know spies who had spouses who were not in the business. They did something else. And if the spies were telling me the truth, and I can't tell you that I don't know,
You don't,
but
yeah.
they told me their wives didn't know what they did. Their wives thought they worked in an entirely different department altogether. That their wife, often their partner or their husbands, didn't know. Their partners of 20 years didn't know who they really were or what they really did. That actually happens, that you can lie to your partner every single day and love them deeply. And that's
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah, because all in the name of the job, and all in the name of the state secrets that must be maintained, that you'll do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for opening this world up. It's easy to not look in there, but you're just providing such a beautiful window into this that just makes you want to go further and deeper. Now, as you said, there is this race against time across the backdrop of that just, yeah, wonderful space that is London. I mean, I think it's people either adore it, or people are just like, oh, London is too much. But you cannot say it doesn't provide the best backdrop for that excitement. Did you trace that journey yourself? I was going to say, did you run? Did you do that? Or did you take it as a sedate pace to ensure that you investigated all the different nooks and crannies?
Well, interestingly, I guess, interestingly or not, I wrote this during lockdown. So I started writing Alias Emma when I couldn't leave my house. And I live just outside of London, but I lived in London for nearly a decade. And I used writing this manuscript, as sort of a way to go back to places I really liked and that I knew really well. So starting her, the journey goes to Clissold Park, which is where a friend of mine used to live. So I know it. And then she ends up sort of starting everything around Camden. And I know Camden, and the journey, I just sort of knew bits of it. I had never put them together, and the connecting tissue of it, I did use like maps and research into things. I've never there's a bit of it that takes place, for example, underground, and that bit of an underground river I've never, obviously you can't, you'd have to be quite the urban explorer to go down there, but there are urban explorers with really good websites that tell me what that looks like, and have pictures of that, so I could see it. So that bit I didn't do. but I did put her in places I'm familiar with. And when I lived in London, I was young and I often was coming home very late at night. And so I'm fascinated by big cities in the middle of the night and how they feel and how they sound. So I got to really spend time exploring that bit of it in this book because it all takes place during this one very late night.
Yeah. I feel like I'm on it. It's great with you. Thank you again for, your your method in conveying, in being able to convey that, you know, that excitement with those details. Okay, 12 hours. 12 hours to deliver an asset across London. But we have a problem with the security cameras, the CCTV. Can I ask, are you an expert on CCTV?
I am not an expert, not at all.
Because they tell us, do they not, that I don't know if it's still the case, but that the UK is one of the most surveilled countries in the world. They
Yeah.
have cameras everywhere,
Yeah.
and so did you have did you have ready access to the network? Did they allow you in to know it?
The CCTV network? No,
Yeah,
I was never allowed to see it, but I worked very closely and on as well. I worked with the digital team at the Home Office. So
great. Yeah, yeah.
I knew how constant the hacking attempts were. I knew that this was every day and I knew that it was state sponsored. So that happens like every day. Like while we're talking now, a government somewhere is trying to hack a British government website. It is just absolutely nonstop. And that did fascinate me because it was just this battle. It was a battle sometimes of almost wills between the technical team and the government who are trying to stop this. In my department where I worked, it was like two 25-year-old guys who were really good coders, and it was them stopping these attacks. Like
Preventing the
that was our
yeah,
defense. Yeah. So
yeah.
that never ends. That is forever. And so the idea, things got hacked all the time. Things got hacked while I was there. So I wanted to play around with that idea of what if, because the all those cameras, they protect us. They're a protection to us, a ring of steel to protect us. But if they're not ours, they're a weapon. That's my idea. Like they suddenly become a gigantic all controlling weapon that can see everything. And that what I wanted to play around with what it would be like for someone to be hunting you.
And hunting you in that way, that and just thinking again of warfare, the invasion of another's territory. And I know borders are a tricky question, but just that sense of, if we just consider what it is to be attacked, and how, whilst at present, at the time of our conversation, we can see maybe more traditional warfare playing out in the situation in Ukraine, and yet, as you
Yeah.
say, there's the non-traditional that is constant. It's not that, oh, today we've finally put an end to it.
Yeah, exactly. It never ends.
Yeah, yeah. And that just, again, cyberspace, online, into infinity, that,
Yeah.
those spaces are not finite. So therefore, what is possible to happen in them is not finite either. So I love the the dynamic that you give us between that, that incessant, hacking attack, and this finite 12 hours.
Yeah.
It is beautiful to play, to play with that. Um, the dynamic between Emma and the asset. You started, you told us about the conversation. Finding that dynamic, how long did it take you to find it as a writer, that thing
Mm.
between them?
It's so tricky that because especially I think in this because the time is compressed. So the transition from them as because at first he's quite reluctant. He doesn't want to be rescued. He doesn't see the world of espionage as his. It's his parents that the assassins are after, but they can't get them. So they're going to go for him because he's vulnerable. And then they can use him as a weapon to get at his parents. So that's the bit. He just doesn't want to accept that because he's a normal guy. He's a doctor. He's not part of this world. This world has nothing to do with him. He resents it. And Emma understands that. But that transition from his resentment of her sort of pulling him out of his own world and into this world of, as he sees it, of hers, of spies and counter spies, spy versus spy, war, fighting. That's not his world. He resents that, but it's along the way, his gradual understanding that she's rescuing him, she's saving his life. When he comes to that conclusion and he realizes how extraordinary her skills are, gradually that over the 12 hours has to change their relationship. He would change, in my mind. He would begin to admire her, and the connection between them when there's, and he does save her life once. Like they are helping each other in the end. They need each other, and that becomes a sort of bond, which then can be a bit confusing in the middle of the night. And she's wondering what her feelings are in that moment, towards this man. And also she knows there can be nothing ever. Like she couldn't. He's going to have to go into hiding. She could never have a relationship with a civilian anyway. That's not right. She's not. She doesn't want to lie to her, someone she cares about. All of it is impossible. But in those moments in the deep darkness, she likes to play around with the idea that maybe, wouldn't it be nice if it wasn't? Wouldn't it be nice if I could have a relationship with someone like this lovely man, who's just this smart, nice, normal guy? And then, of course, she can't. And I imagine we don't see inside his head, but I suspect he's thinking the same thing. But then, obviously, they're far too threatened. Everything happens far too fast, and none of that is explored. But that is very hard. Trying to make that work, and I hope I did, so that it's beneath the surface and is never explored really by either of them, not properly, and never really verbalized. But it just sort of hangs in the air like a mist.
Yeah. The what if, yeah, from both sides, yeah. And you really, again, really great that you make it impossible. I think that's so important, not to give in to what might appear like a bit of a cliche.
No, exactly.
Yeah, and so yeah, really, really welcome that. If we're thinking of the complete package as we now have it, and again, it's a question that I love to ask authors because you've put all the work in here. Is there a particular aspect of Alias Emma that makes you think when you look at it, did I do that? Is that me? With my idea? Is that, whoa, look at that on the page.
Oh God, I mean, almost all of it, to be honest. I can't believe I wrote it. I can't believe I was brave enough to say I really want to write this, and I'm going to tell this story. It's as I mentioned earlier, it's such a scary world to step into, the world of espionage fiction, because it's a tiny bit unwelcoming. It feels a bit like a closed shop. It's not like straight up crime. I feel like crime fiction is the most welcoming place in the world. The door is flung open.
Yeah.
They want everybody to write.
Yeah, it's like here's another, come on, just set another place at the table.
Exactly.
This is great. Yeah, we'll put the extension on. It's fine. Wait a minute. Yeah, come on in. Yeah, no worries. Whereas, yeah, like you say,
yes.
And it's almost, it's weird, isn't it? It's almost as if, from what you're describing, the world of writing espionage is almost like the world of espionage itself.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an invisible door there, and it's sort of like, do you dare open this door? Who do you think you are? Do you know who else has opened this door? Ian Fleming opened this door. John le Carré opened this door. Who are you?
Yeah, why should you? Yeah. And yet, I think it's, the sense of it has to be that, I'm brave.
Yeah.
I'm brave, and I have a character that if you will allow me to open this door, you will see that she fits well within this world, and she fits well within this world because she is a character of now,
Yeah.
and we, and we need, we need those characters now. We're grateful for the heritage and all that that means, but life evolves, the world evolves, and espionage thriller writing also needs to evolve, I think, to my mind. And everybody's entitled, but I really think, Ava, what when you talk about opening that door, it's almost, it's like, I'm coming through. Because I think that's what Emma would do. It's like, yeah,
Yes.
hello.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I am so thankful that you have become that author, and created this character, and no pressure, can't wait for the next one. But let's savor the first one first. um I want to wish you all the very best with it. And as I say, I hope it's not too long before we see book two. Are you excited for book two?
I am. I am very excited about it because it's already written. I'm editing it now, and it allows me to take Emma out of that very claustrophobic world I've placed her in book one. And in book two, things open out a bit. So she gets to do a bit more spycraft. In this one, she is in
Hmm.
book two, she's investigating the murder of an MI6 analyst who's killed in his apartment in London. And it's such a serious crime because of who he was. And they're trying to ascertain if the murder is connected to his work. And once they decide that it probably is, she has to go undercover after the people who she thinks might be responsible. And those people, it involves basically going undercover on an oligarch's yacht in the Mediterranean. So she's on the move again, but in a very different way throughout this book. So I do create another claustrophobic world in this one, in book two. This one's on a
On
boat.
the boat, yeah.
Exactly. But it takes place over a longer period of time and does take us to more exotic locations. And yeah, I loved writing it. It was such an absolute blast. So I feel like it develops Emma just a little bit more. We get to see more of her
Mm.
and get into her head a little more and see her really work. And in book one, she's reacting. She's escaping and she's rescuing. And in book two, she's just working. She's just being a
Yeah,
spy. And
yeah, and that proactive,
yeah.
yeah, fabulous. And to round off our conversation, if I'm allowed to say this, because the information that your publicist sent says stop press, and it really is stop press, because it says film rights in the Alias Emma series have been acquired by Ink Factory, producers of The Night Manager, and we all enjoyed The Night Manager. And it says, with a pilot fully produced and in the final stages of editing and casting for the full series about to start, which brings a big oh my god, excuse me, to it's like wow, to see the world that you have created on the page go up on the screen, to become, the possibility of a series that we just get so hooked on is wow. What does it feel for you?
Well, it's funny because it's all happening sort of someplace else to me because I'm at home working and they're off in Los Angeles doing what they do, and it is so it feels really distant and I won't believe it until it
Till you see
actually,
it. Yeah.
yeah. But it is it's magic. It's very exciting. They're absolutely lovely. The Ink Factory is owned by John le Carre's sons, so it feels
Wow. Wow. So
like
there's a seal of approval.
yeah, exactly. It feels
Eh,
like a connection to true spy like television and
yeah.
movies, and that's so I'm very hopeful and I really love them and I love what they're doing and the things they've shown me. So it's still very early stages.
Yeah.
um Fingers still crossed because it could all still go horribly wrong, as I like to say. But I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled.
Well, I got goosebumps when you were talking about that, and that's often a really good sign of the what might be. So I'll keep it up there in the hoping. And that, yeah, that, yeah, it's beautiful to have her on the page, but if she leaves the page and you know, because it makes me think a little bit about Anne Cleeve's Vera. You know, Vera was on
Mm.
the page, Vera was there was no doubt about it. But then when Vera got on the screen, then of course more people, you know, and I always love that two-way traffic, that when people have found a character on the screen, then they go back and look, they might have not found that character on the page, and it just, you know, they go back to the book. But
Yes.
enough of our dreaming, because we're allowed, but we should stop.
Mm.
Ava Glass, thank you so much for a chance to be taken into a very different world. It's
Well,
wonderful.
thank you so much for having me. I've loved this conversation, and I love Newcastle Noir and everything you're doing up there. And I'd love to come and just hang out with you guys sometime, because what a city is Newcastle. I love it up there.
It has something very, very special, and if you are able, and if the publisher gives the yes, that is possible, we would absolutely love to have you. In fact, I would love for you to be in conversation with Judith O'Reilly.
Wow,
I
I'd
don't know
love
if you,
that.
I don't know if you know Judith's work, but she has spoken. Um, some of the things that you've said about how it's not easy to be writing in the world of espionage.
Mm.
And so I think that's a connection that I would love to see happen. Keep
Oh,
it
I'd love that too. That sounds great. Let's see if we can make that real.
indeed. But until then, Eva, may the force be with you.
And you. Thank you
Yeah,
again.
thank you. Bye for now.